Hello, everyone. My name is Allison, if you are new here, and I'm a human design guide and also a coach and mentor. And I think that's all I'll say about myself right now. Oh, and if you're into human design, which you probably are if you're watching this video, and if you're not and you're just here for Taylor Swift, I will bring things down to your level as well. But if you are into human design, I am a 5/1 emotional projector. And I really have fun studying people and studying systems as well. And so I sat down with, this is like kind of funny. I have this like laminated blank body graph, and I filled out Taylor's chart while I watched her documentary. If you haven't seen it and you want to see it, it's called Miss Americana and it's on Netflix. And in case you haven't seen my other video, I also made one about Billie Eilish after I watched her documentary, The World's a Little Blurry. So if you enjoy this, you might enjoy that one too. And if you see me looking down or to the left, I have some notes here. So this is like, I've been sitting on this idea for a long time. And I don't know, I just didn't feel ready to share it. And I feel more ready now. So I've been noticing a lot of people talking about her, and when I drop little nuggets of information about Taylor Swift's human design, people are interested. So I'm just gonna go with it. But I did this process of watching her documentary on May 8th, 2021, which is over 6 months ago. And I've just been sitting on this idea ever since. So thanks to everyone who has supported me in this process of feeling ready to share about this. And I think that's all I was going to say. So I will be sharing my screen so you can see Taylor's chart. And I also have one other thing, an image that I thought would be helpful to share too, but I will mostly not be sharing my screen. So feel free to pull up her chart somewhere else if you want to. I'll share it now though. So this is the other picture I mentioned. We'll come back to that. And this is Taylor Swift's human design body graph. And if you're into human design, maybe you're already seeing some things. I think I'm just going to go ahead and dive in. And where I often start in foundational readings is with profile. Maybe I'll do a quick overview first. It's like I need to be more organized this time. It doesn't matter not being organized. So things that I'll probably talk about today. Profile. Taylor's profile is 5/1. If you don't know where that comes from, it is the line level of the conscious sun, and then the line level of the conscious sun and earth, So 5/1 is where that comes from. I also talk a very little bit about her type. Taylor Swift is a projector in human design. I could explain why that is. She's a projector, so there's that. I also am going to talk a little bit about her undefined solar plexus and undefined G center, as well as her defined heart. I think those are the main 3 centers that I'll talk about today. And I am going to talk probably quite a bit about her incarnation cross. So if you did watch my Billie Eilish video, I'll say this is probably going to be a little bit more in depth for various reasons. But her incarnation cross is called the left angle cross of confrontation, which is very fun. So we'll dig into that. And then I will also talk a little bit about her 3 channels. So the 1858 is called the channel of judgment. The 2830 or 3828 is the channel of struggle. And the 4426 is the channel of surrender. So I will talk about all 3 of those as well. So like I said, I'm going to get started with profile, and I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen as well and start digging in on profile. And I'm actually going to reshare my screen because this is what I meant to show with the other picture. So anyone who has done a foundational reading with me, you probably know I always start off with profile, at least of late. I used to start off with type, but I just like starting off with profile better. And I love this image. So this is simply an image or a visual that helps us to understand the 6 lines of the hexagram. So I think it's very illustrative and I appreciate the visuals. So I'm going to use it as I talk about her profile a bit. So she's a 5-1 and we have the 5th line here. And when I talk about the 5th line, I also like to talk very briefly about the 2nd line because they are, they're called resonant profiles, which just means sort of that they have something in common. I can feel myself trying to cater this to people who know a lot about human design and people who know absolutely nothing. So if you're anywhere in the middle, I hope I'm catering to you as well. So the 5th line, you can see both the 5th and the 2nd line are sitting behind a window. The 2nd line, all the lights are on and they're on the 1st floor. The 5th line, all the lights are off and they're on the 2nd floor. And so right away, you can understand how both of these profiles are in what we call a projection field. And the projection for both of those lines goes in different directions. And so for the 2nd line, we call it an inward projection that, outward projection. I mixed them up for a second there. Outward projection. So because everyone can see them, they're on that 1st floor with the window and the lights on. People can see what they're naturally good at. And then with the 5th line, the projection is going in the opposite direction. And so the projections are coming inward instead of them projecting out. What does that mean? It means that 5th lines, just like this picture illustrates, it's almost like a silhouette of a person that we can't see everything that's going on. And with that lack of ability to really see clearly into the 5th line comes the projections, which are the stories that we make up unconsciously about what this person is and what they can offer and what they do. So I'll stop sharing. No, I won't. So that's just a very quick sort of understanding of the projection fields of the 5th line. 5th lines are called the heretic. They are here to be leaders. And they have the ability to universalize something. When we say universalize, we mean that they are sharing something for a broad audience. And to me, this projection field really serves a purpose when we think about universalization in this way. That with the 5th line, they are able to be universal. They're able to speak to a universal audience because that projection field is allowing different people to see different things in the same person. Does that make sense a little bit? So if you are into human design, I'm sorry, going straight into teacher mode with this. There's my little blurb on the 5th line. There's a lot more there to talk about. And then we have the 1st line, which is the person that's on the ground and building the foundation. And so with the 1st line, we talk a lot about this spectrum of strength and weakness, and that the 1st line is constantly trying to figure out where their foundation of knowledge or foundation really in anything is weak. And they're constantly trying to make sure that what they are doing, building, learning is strong enough to be shared. And when we look at the house model, we can really see that that serves a purpose because the house wouldn't even be standing without the 1st line. And it can feel like a lot of pressure. And when we pair the 5 and the 1 together, and I'm remembering now that I actually did a video on the 5-1 profile because it's my profile as well. We have this person who isn't always seen by the general public and feels a lot of insecurity, or can feel a lot of insecurity that what they, again, provide or offer or learn or build isn't strong enough, good enough for the purpose of sharing. And so when we bring the 5th line and the 1st line together, we get this huge focus for 5-1s on reputation and public perception. I'm going to stop sharing here now because you got a little background with the 5th line and the 1st line. And so when we talk about the 5-1 profile, we can come back to talking about Taylor Swift now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where I see this profile being sort of clearly demonstrated in her life experience. Looking over to my notes again, because I've already forgotten what I wrote about this. Okay, so first of all, she has an album called Reputation. So that's one big part. I mean, she wrote an entire album about it. A whole chapter of her life was contemplating her reputation. And I honestly didn't really know about this drama she had with Kanye West until I did watch the documentary. I guess I can fill you in case you don't know about it either. But I think she was winning an award, and Kanye West at that time was, oh God, my pop culture knowledge is really bad. Was it about Beyonce? I think it was about Beyonce. Basically, Taylor won the award and she went on stage to accept it, and then Kanye West interrupted and said she didn't deserve it because someone else deserved it more. And people started booing when she was on stage, and she immediately assumed they were booing her, which I can totally understand. I'm sure a lot of us can. I think there was probably some division that a lot of people are probably booing Kanye West for interrupting a person accepting an award. But one of the reflections that she shared on this was, she said, for someone who has built their whole value system on people clapping for you, that this was such a moment of, I'm fidgeting with this, that this was such a moment of her reputation being stained in a lot of ways. And let's see, what else did she talk about? Yeah, so another quote she shared was, she experiences a lot of maybe stress or concern about the way that people are perceiving her. And when we talk about the 5-1, again, it's called the heretic. The fifth line is called the heretic. So something that we'll often talk about is that the fifth line is here to kind of like save the day, and people project onto them that they can fix their problems and offer them something. And when the fifth line is able to deliver on those projections, they seem like a savior and they're well loved. And when the opposite happens, which is when the idea that someone has of the fifth line is not fulfilled, that they're called the heretic and they're hated and they can be a scapegoat. And so much of what Taylor talks about with her experience of fame, it's almost like she's walking on eggshells because she's waiting for things to turn sour. And so one of the quotes that I had written down is she said, society is tolerating me being successful. Like for right now, society is just tolerating my experience of success, and that could end at any time. She also talks about, this is another quote that's like, it's like goosebumps. She says, when people fall out of love with you, there's like nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do to make it come back. She also, another quote, she said, I became the person who everybody wanted me to be. It's another very fifth line. She also has an undefined G or identity center, which I'll talk about later. But the fifth line has so much pressure on them from these projections that there can be this tendency to take the shape of whatever someone is projecting onto you, right? And we don't always know what the projections are, but when we do, we can lean into those and try to be as plain, acceptable, I can't think of the right word, appealing, maybe, like palatable is the word I'm looking for. We can try to be the most palatable version of ourselves just so that we can avoid this crash is the word that's coming to mind. But this rupture in the projection field when people start to see what we really are instead of just what they want us to see. So she said, I became the person who everyone wanted me to be. I also wrote down a quote from Ra Uru Hu. He says, the moment that the 5 personality cannot satisfy the expectation of others is when it suffers. And I just think this is another spot where, from the quotes I've shared from her too, there is so much, the word pressure keeps coming to mind. There's so much pressure put on the fifth line to live up to whatever it is that other people see in them. And when they can't do that, they can tend to go into, like a self-preservation mode where they're avoiding being perceived by other people too. So I think, oh no, that's not all I have. So I have one more. If you are like me listening to the 10-minute version of All Too Well that she just released, there's actually a quote that is very 5-1, very fifth line. She says, "The idea you had of me, who was she? A never needy, ever loving jewel whose shine reflects on you." It's just, again, even, this song is, I won't get into that drama. The song is about someone who really cared about her at that time and wasn't even seeing the real her. Yeah. So I think I'm going to finish up the 5-1 there. That's already a lot. I have no concept of how long this video is. Also, I didn't check the time. So let's talk a tiny bit about her type, which is the projector. So with projectors, I'll just talk about what's relevant to this. We talk about the projector keynote being success. That's sort of like the guiding light for projectors, that they're always moving toward a success. Whereas some people are more focused on satisfaction or peace, that success is really what projectors are here to move toward. And that's the indication that they might be in alignment or, yeah, so success. And, oh, okay, so then the opposite of success, sorry, just like watching my brain work there for a second, because I forgot why I mentioned that. The opposite, or in other words, the not self theme, so that's the signature theme is success. The not self theme is bitterness. And I do think that if you were to watch the documentary, you might see this playing out in different parts, but she actually also says it. I think this is actually about her experience after the MTV Music Awards with Kanye West. She said, "I felt really bitter, like a wounded animal lashing out." And so when we bring together this desire that all projectors have to be seen and to be recognized and to feel successful, and we have this experience that she had where basically all those things went away, right? She was recognized and feeling successful, and then someone said, actually, you don't deserve that. And then she thought people were booing her, and it's sort of this like crash from the throne almost. And that brought up all of that bitterness for her. This is just like a silly note, but I noticed she's hanging out in pajamas a lot of like lounge wear, a lot of working from horizontal as well. And those are all things that I sort of jokingly, but not really, associate with projectors, is focusing on comfort and yeah. Okay, so moving along, I'm glad I have this list that's like somewhat organized now. So I'm gonna pull up her chart again. Thanks for bearing with me. And talk about some centers as well. So the first one I'm going to talk about is her undefined solar plexus. So you can see she has a couple of gates activating it, but it's not defined. And something that is typically said of the undefined solar plexus is that because they are open or undefined in the solar plexus, which is where emotions live, that there can be a tendency for them to amplify, like to absorb and amplify the emotional energies of other people. And so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. It's just like, so with that, we can sometimes experience with an undefined solar plexus, people can experience a desire to not rock the boat because there can be so much sensitivity with the undefined solar plexus that people don't want to do something to create an emotional experience for someone else because then they have to experience it as well. Does that make sense? So this sensitivity to other people's needs can also almost create like a hesitance to share how we're feeling, to set boundaries with other people, etc. So the other thing I'll say as well is that when people have an undefined solar plexus and two of her incarnation cross gates, which are huge parts of her design, are in this undefined center, that so much of her life is going to be focused on the energy of this center. And it's only going to come out when she is in connection with other people who are able to activate and define her emotional solar plexus. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but the two things for now really, a tendency to avoid confrontation, a tendency to step away from speaking her mind, or to set boundaries, as well as the energy of this being super intense or amplified when she's in relationship with other people. So overall, she's pretty even keeled, which tends to be the case with an undefined solar plexus. Not always, but when people are really in touch with it, they can kind of separate what's theirs and what's other people's. So then generally even keeled, but those experiences and relationships are the source of those emotions then. So big waves are happening, but not necessarily consistently or independently of other people. She also, toward the end of the documentary, she is working on speaking her mind more and learning to take up more space. The quote that I wrote down for this was, she wanted to deprogram misogyny from my brain, but it was really in regards to her learning to speak up and share her opinions with others. There's also she really wrote a whole song about this. It's called The Man. And it's all about how she believes she would feel differently about speaking her mind and showing up and taking up space if she were a man. And I really feel that certainly in her defined heart energy, but in that undefined solar plexus and the lessons that we learn over time, that it's okay to take up space. Ooh, getting out of breath. Okay, so I also wanted to talk a little bit about her undefined G. She has tons of hanging gates off of it, but it is still undefined. One of the quotes I wrote down is, she says, we don't want to be condemned for being multifaceted. And with this undefined G, there's so many different energies that are coming out. And so this sort of wisdom of, I don't need to be just one thing, I can be all that I am. And it's okay to be all that I am and not try to just be or do one thing. And I think that we can really see this throughout her different albums. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was really not a big Taylor Swift fan before her 2020 albums came out, the ones that are much more folksy. But you know, she was like country and then super poppy and a little more folksy, and now it's sort of a mix of everything, and just kind of allowing herself to have those different evolutions, interests, tastes. Another thing that I certainly experienced, and I know a lot of people do with an undefined G center, is a difficulty or maybe like a struggle. I guess those are the same thing. But this ongoing theme of not feeling like we belong or not feeling like we're enough. And when I say that, that sounds like hard stuff. It's like not feeling like we belong or like we are lovable or like we are fixed enough in who we are. So there's a lot there that we could tease out. But one quote that I wrote down is, she said, I wish I didn't feel like there was a better version of me out there. This like am I unique enough? What even am I? Is there a space in the world where I belong? Am I lovable? Or like she said, is there someone out there who's just a better version of who I am already? So I wrote that down. And then I have a couple of quotes for talking about the undefined G center with the defined heart, because I really think that, you know, oh, okay. There's so many things that want to come out of my mouth, and I'm just like, I don't have to say it all right now. Undefined G plus defined heart. 3 quotes. So like I said, with the undefined G, there can be a tendency to feel like we don't belong, or we're not lovable, we don't have a direction in life, or even like we don't have a fixed enough identity, like we're too changing, we're too chameleon-like, if that makes sense. And then we have the defined heart, which likes to prove itself. The defined heart is a motor. It's also called the ego center. So it's this experience of like, when I set myself out to do something, I'm going to follow through on it. I like to make commitments. I like to prove myself. And so something in particular about her experience after the MTV Music Awards, Kanye West, which we talked about, she sort of went into overdrive of, I have to prove now that I belong here. And I just think that quote, it was, yeah, she said, it was all fueled by not feeling like I belonged there. That this effort that she put in was all like, I need to prove myself now, but it's fueled by this undefined G sense of like, do I even belong here? Do I deserve to take up space here, sort of? And another quote, she said, I just really went to this place where I was like, I'm going to prove myself and make people know I deserve to be here. Make sure people know I deserve to be here. And then the last thing she said about that 2009 MTV Music Awards, I guess I wrote down the date too. She said, I'm only here because I work hard and I'm nice to people. And so her value has been sort of attached to one aspect of her, which is being nice, that undefined solar plexus, and because she's working hard to prove herself with that defined heart, and that her worth is kind of wrapped up in that. I'm really skimming. I feel like this has been really long already. I also feel like I've been really skimming through the centers stuff. And so this is just a 5-1 type disclaimer to say there's a lot more here, and I wish I could share my full foundation of the 9 centers knowledge with you to talk about Taylor Swift. And I'm so excited to talk about her incarnation cross that I'm going to skim through that, share some quotes, and keep moving. So, wow, this might get really long. Okay, so incarnation cross. Taylor Swift has, I guess I'll share this really quickly. So her incarnation cross, for those of you who don't know, the incarnation cross is always the combination of the top 4 gates. So personality sun, personality earth, design sun, design earth. And that unique combination of 4 gates, and sometimes they can be in different spots as well. So there's another incarnation cross where the 26 is over here, for example. But the combination and the placement of these 4 gates is called the incarnation cross. People say that this is like 70% of who someone is wrapped into these 4 gates because they're such prominent aspects of their chart. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, but you saw 26, 45, 6, 36. Those are the 4 gates we're going to talk about, and I'm actually going to point them out here as well quickly. So the 26 we have coming out of her defined heart, the 45 out of her undefined throat, the 6 out of her undefined solar plexus, and the 36 out of her undefined solar plexus. So I'm going to be talking about those 4 gates. I also did a little bit of reading or quote finding in May when I started doing this. It's November now, just to be clear, where I didn't just look at the energy of the gate, which I have up here somewhere. But I also looked at the energy of the gate in the specific line that it's in. And then I read about her incarnation cross, but also looked a little bit into the way that the incarnation cross plays with her profile as well. So there are resources that can help you do that. If you need help with that, let me know. Okay, so the first thing on my list here, I already mentioned a little bit, which is that her incarnation cross has 2 gates in the same center, which are, so there's 2 gates in her solar plexus. And those 2 gates are, obviously the gates are defined, but the center is undefined. And so such a big part of who she is. And if you remember as well, those 2 gates, they're on the body side, right? So they're unconscious for her. So things that she's not consciously necessarily aware of, but that she's being guided into these experiences by her body, her design, her unconscious parts. So 2 solar plexus gates, undefined solar plexus, and they are unconscious for her. Thank you for staying with me for that. So she's here to experience the energy of that center, right? But it's undefined. So she's drawing in people all the time that define that center. She's drawing in people who allow her to experience that energy in a bigger way. The energy is always there, but because of the way individual gates don't have access to energy, really, those individual hanging gates, especially in undefined centers, are like little antennas that are looking for their other half, if that makes sense. Even though she's single definition, she doesn't have a split, because those very prominent gates are in an undefined center, that this is happening anyway. So with those 2 gates in that undefined center, the 36 talks, is a lot about entering into new experiences. The 36 is called the gate of crisis. And this is, again, so I'm talking about these really out of order, which maybe is why I should have had my screen shared, but that's okay. So if we talk about her design Earth is the 36, and it has a lot to do with entering into new experiences so that we can learn from them. We talk a lot about expectations with this gate, and the importance of releasing expectations so that we can just step into an experience whatever is there for us to experience, and then learn from whatever that experience is, even if it's different than our expectation is. It's fueled by this energy of really fantasy and desire. And Taylor has 2 gates in this stream, but I'm struggling to talk about this because I want you to understand all of it. And also I can't explain all of it and keep talking about Taylor Swift. So I'm just gonna like step back and say, like, remind myself I don't have to explain it all. So the gate of crisis, all about new experiences. The fuel for this stream is all about the energy of desire and fantasy. And even though Taylor doesn't have the whole stream, she has 2 gates in this stream, and one of them is really a prominent placement for her. So 36.1, because it's in the first line, it says here, this is simply about living out the experience. There's nobody there for that experience. There will be someone else. That is why crisis is so common. And then the rule of cycles, in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. I'm going to read that again. The rule of cycles, in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. Please take one moment to think about every Taylor Swift song that you have ever heard. They're all about crisis, right? They're about her going into an experience, typically a relationship with a man. Most of her songs are about that, right? Going into an experience with some expectation in mind that they're going to love her, recognize her, give her X, Y, and Z, and something happens. Maybe it's the 5th line projections, maybe it's something else entirely, And then there's a crisis. When we talk about crisis, it's like this emotional climax point that we reach this thing, and then things can sort of like blow up from there or crash from there, that we get to this high point of emotion where like really intensity is at its height, and then there's a crash. And so I wanted to talk about that one. I don't know why I'm doing this in this order, because that's the last one that was on my list. That's the 36, again, talking about that solar plexus energy, emotional, emotionality and connection is what lives in the solar plexus. And then we have the 6, which is here to mate. It's called the channel of mating. Gate 6 is about friction. The energy of this gate and channel is about intimacy and maintaining boundaries. So creating intimacy and maintaining boundaries. We talk about friction. I won't get too into detail on that. But friction is required to create intimacy. I'll let you sit with that sentence on your own. So I'm just going to read, this is just like quotes from Ra that I wanted to talk about. So its energy is the hope and pain wave of intimacy, the fundamental design component of progress, the law that growth cannot exist without friction. So again, just thinking about emotional experiences and connections with other people that Taylor is stepping into. I'm going to try to pick up the pace now, maybe. And then I'm going to talk about her 2 conscious sun and earth gates. So the 26 and the 45, if you don't remember. So the 26, in the 5th line, so gate 26, I'll talk about first, is called the gate of the salesman. It is a nickname for it. And it is a gate in an ego, so community, also known as tribal, ego subcircuit, all about just like money, money, success, business, resources. That's the energy that we typically talk about in this, like providing resources for a community. And that can be exactly what it sounds like, or it can be much more like capitalistic, which is also about providing resources. So natural sales abilities, natural energy of like resource receiving and managing. I'm going to read the quote here. The maximization of the power of memory applied to the nurturing of continuity. It's also the gate of exaggeration. The understanding of mechanics and the application of energy to achieve maximum potential. So of course, Taylor is very gifted and very privileged. So we'll say that first. And she has this energy here about what did I say? To achieve maximum potential. And really this gate can be about manipulation. And if that is like red flags for you, just remember that to manipulate something is just simply to like man, that the root of that word is hands. So it's this energy of like taking something and changing it or manipulating it in some way. And this can be done in a low integrity way, where we have that like skeevy salesman at the car dealership who's lying and using manipulation tactics to get you to do something. And there's also manipulation like, I used to be a high school teacher, and there is an aspect of manipulation and getting a high school student to do something sometimes, not in a negative way, but manipulation in that we are saying something in a specific way with a specific frequency to get someone to do something that hopefully is of their benefit, right? So I was a teacher, so it's doing things to get people to, for their benefit of their learning. So that's the 26th gate. And I just thinking about Taylor Swift and how she is really kind of like transmitting truth, and she's able to speak to such a wide variety of people. And she has broken how many records? Like she has broken so many records in her art, her work, her music. So I just wanted to flag that as well. I'm talking a little bit about the gates, and I should have been doing this more quickly, which is okay. Because when we talk about an incarnation cross, you can Google and find like a little blurb on each cross. Or I have a resource from Ra Uru Hu about incarnation crosses specifically, and then breaking them down by profile as well. And I think that there's so much more wisdom when we dig in and talk about the gates individually and think about the ways that those energies are playing out in the centers that they are in. And then we can talk about the incarnation cross, but I just think there's a lot more when we dig in piece by piece. I just looked at the clock, still don't know when I started filming, so no idea how long this is. Okay, so last gate of the incarnation cross is, it's not the last one, it's just the last one I'm doing now. Personality Earth, so on the black side, on the right side. Gate 45, this is also in line 5 because she's a 5-1. So gate 45 is like another nickname, the gate of the king or queen. Also the gate of the, oh, the name has escaped me. The name has escaped me, but I can talk about it even if I don't know the actual name. So king or queen, I think, is typically like a nickname, but there's a more official gate name. The treasurer? No, that's the 21. That's fine. So leadership. We're thinking about a king or a queen here. So this is also in the community, AKA tribal ego circuit. So we're still talking about resource management and everything that has to do with the ego. And in this case, we're not on the defense side, we're in the, yeah. So leadership, sharing resources as well. The high expression of this gate is a generous ruler, so a benevolent ruler, that they can have whatever it is that they desire as long as they're still working in service to their community. Yeah, I think that's a good place to land on that. So a couple quotes: the natural and generally beneficial attraction of like forces. And then she says, Ra Uru Hu, regardless of whether they have to be the nicest crown and throne, their power lies in them being a benefit to the tribe. As long as they can benefit the tribe, they can indulge in anything, including decadence. Okay, so those are the 4 gates. And so I think, let's see, I think I'm going to talk a little bit now. Weird hand motion thing here. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about the energy of this cross, which I mean, I really already have. But it's called confrontation. And so we're thinking about the 6th gate, where she's creating friction in relationships with other people, because friction is required to create intimacy. We're thinking about the 36th gate, which is all about crises and this like climax that we reach in our emotions when things are, when our expectations are unmet. We're talking about her ability to cater her message and manage resources in a way to maximize potential. And we are talking about her leadership qualities as well. More resource management. It's like hard for me to dial back the details sometimes. So, okay. With this, we have this person who is really designed for confrontation in a lot of ways. And to be able to step into something and claim what is hers. I think, if I remember correctly, she has been moving toward fame as a musician since she was 13 years old. And with this defined heart, this energy of like, I commit to something, I know what I want, is my heart in it? Is this deal sweet enough for me? This person who's able to say like, I want that. And she kind of committed to it, even though it was really scary, and is moving toward this thing and reaching success all the while. Okay, I am not sure what happened. There was a strange, a strange interruption. I'm sorry and welcome back. So I think I was just talking a little bit about her incarnation cross, the cross of confrontation. And I think kind of pairing this with her 5-1 profile and this potential to be the hero or the scapegoat or the heretic, right? That she ruffles people's feathers just in sort of being who she is. And so much of her life and her growth in life has been, and probably to an extent will continue to be, about growing through relationships and experiencing friction with other people, and stepping into new experiences with other people and with this attention to expectations, if that makes sense. I have a couple of things that I pulled about her incarnation cross, but I think I'm going to stop there. We talked a lot about the individual gates, and I want to, do I still have time? Well, okay, I'm gonna talk super quickly, we'll see, about her 2 channels, and then I'll wrap up. Just because I have some quotes that I wanted to mention. So one of her 3 channels is the 2838, and it's called the channel of struggle. And the keynote for this is an archetypal hero's journey against odds, which again, as I mentioned, Taylor Swift is very privileged. I'm pretty sure her family like picked up their life for her to be able to pursue music. And this is an individual channel, so it doesn't really matter what's happening outside. This is a person who's meant to find what they want in life, and they're always going to be coming up against something and struggling against something. And so they're actually healthiest when they are pushing themselves, coming out of the root and moving toward the spleen. They are healthiest when they have something to, again, like butt up against and move and fight against. My boss has this channel, and her favorite quote that she uses all the time is, if you can't get out of it, get into it. And that's what I feel. I just feel like that's such a clear illustration of the channel of struggle. Okay, so I was going to try to keep this brief. So something she mentioned is, she says, if I just need to make a better record and do better. Like, I just have to keep trying harder. And she also said, if I don't beat everything I've done prior, it could be deemed a colossal failure. So again, we're thinking about this like defined heart, gate 26, the 5th line pressure to have this immaculate reputation, and to be with her, she's a projector, to feel successful and to be recognized and invited by other people. And she is putting so much pressure on herself with this channel of struggle, as well as the channel of judgment, the 5818, which is all about like continuous improvement, like insatiable drive to improve things, that this energy is being turned outward to an extent that she's talking about, I need to improve my work. But because she's so tied to her work, that there is sort of an internalization as well, that like she's fighting against herself. And she's constantly trying to perfect and improve herself, if that makes sense. Okay, I think that there's like more I could say about this, surprisingly. But I'm pretty sure I think this might be an hour long, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know what came up for you, if there are other things that stood out to you. I guess I dug pretty deep, but there's so much else here to talk about. And if you enjoyed this, like I said, give it a like, comment, let me know what resonated. You could save it if you want to come back to it later, or share it with someone as well if you think that they might enjoy it. Just a T-Swift fan or a human design enthusiast. And if you would like me to dive this deep into your chart, as I did for Taylor Swift, reach out. I would love to. It is a pleasure for me to dig into other people's charts and really dive in to see what I can see in them and help them to feel seen. So just reach out. You can DM me if you want to book something. And that's all. Thanks.